Apache warrior took in a white child. Until soldiers called him Kidnapper, the Apache warrior found the child curled beneath a dead mule, still breathing, still silent, his tiny fingers clutching a scrap of his mother's dress like it could bring her back. The sun didn't rise that morning. It clawed its way up, white-hot and cruel, scraping across the desert like a blade over bone. Taza had seen droughts before, had ridden through summers where the earth cracked open like lips begging for water. But this silence was different. No birds, no wind, just the slow creak of his saddle leather and the dull thud of his pony's hooves on dust-packed earth. He smelled them before he saw them. Gunpowder, rot, blood baked into sand. Around the bend of a dry creek bed, the wreckage waited. A prairie schooner, wheels shattered, tongue snapped clean off like a broken bone. Canvas flapped in tatters. One ox lay bloated in the shade of the wagon, tongue swollen, eyes pecked hollow. The other? Gone. Drag off, maybe. Or walked until its heart burst. Taza dismounted slow, hand near his rifle, eyes scanning. He'd learned young. Mercy rarely waited at the end of a trail like this. More often, it was ambush, or disease, or grief sharp enough to kill a man without drawing blood. He stepped over a boot, then a bonnet, then a doll, porcelain face smashed, one blue eye staring skyward. And then movement, not animal, not wind, a whimper, low, vet, barely there. Behind the wagon's collapsed rear wheel, half buried in dust and flies, lay the boy. Couldn't have been more than 4, maybe 5, pale as milk left in the sun, hair matted with dirt and dry blood. One arm curled tight against his chest, the other stretched out, fingers locked around a faded blue scrap of calico. His mother's, maybe, or his sister's. Didn't matter now. Whoever owned it was 10 feet away, face down in the dirt, skirt hiked up, back peppered with bullet holes. The father lay near the mule, one hand still gripping an empty revolver, the other reaching toward the boy. Like even in death, he'd try to crawl back. Taza knelt, didn't speak, didn't touch the boy right away, just watched him breathe. Shallow, fast, lips cracked, eyelids fluttering like moth wings against a lantern. The raiders hadn't taken the child. Why? Too small to sell? Too loud to keep quiet? Or maybe, just maybe, they'd left him as a message. A warning. This is what happens when you cross the desert without guns or God. Taza pulled his canteen, uncorked it, let a thin stream of warm water drip between the boy's lips. The child didn't stir, didn't swallow, just let it run down his chin into the dust. Taza sighed, a sound like wind through dry reeds. He'd buried his own son 2 winters past. Fever took him. Quick. Quiet. The medicine man sang for 3 nights. The women wailed. Taza? He rode west until his horse dropped. Came back empty-handed, empty-hearted. He looked at the boy again. Alive. That was all. Not a gift. Not a burden. Just alive. He wrapped the child in his own wool blanket, the one his sister had woven before the soldiers burned their village. Smelled of sage and sweat and old smoke. He lifted him gentle, like handling a bird with a broken wing, and carried him to his pony. The boy didn't cry, didn't scream, just stared at Taza with eyes too wide, too blue, eyes that had seen the last thing any child should ever see. Taza mounted up, settled the boy against his chest, kicked his pony into a slow trot. Behind them, the wagon groaned in the heat. A buzzard landed on the father's outstretched hand. Then another. No one would come for them. Not out here. Not in this godless stretch between nowhere and worse. Taza didn't look back. He rode east, toward the red rocks, toward the canyons, toward silence. The boy slept against his heartbeat. And for the first time in years, Taza felt the weight of something he hadn't asked for. Something alive. Something that might, against all odds, live. The boy didn't cry for his mother, didn't scream in the night. But when he whispered bread beside the campfire, Taza knew the child was coming back to the world, and the world would come for him. Winter came soft that year. No snow, just cold that crept into bones like a thief. Taza built a lean-to against a sandstone overhang, lined the floor with rabbit pelts, and kept the fire fed with juniper branches that popped and hissed like whispering spirits. The boy, still nameless, still silent, slept curled against Taza's side, his breath warm and steady, his small fingers sometimes twitching in dreams that never broke into sound. He healed slow, the cuts on his arms scabbed over, the burns on his feet, from walking bare in the sun, calloused. His hair grew, his eyes stopped looking hollow, but his voice, that stayed buried, like a seed waiting for rain that never came. Taza didn't push, didn't beg, didn't even speak much English around him, just lived, moved, showed. He taught the boy to skin a rabbit with a flint knife, to listen for water under rock, to track a deer by the way its hoof pressed into mud, not too deep, not too light. He showed him how to weave yucca fibers in a cord, how to tie a knot that wouldn't slip, how to read the sky before a storm. The boy watched, learned, mimicked. He didn't smile, didn't laugh. But sometimes, when Taza wasn't looking, the boy would press his cheek against the pony's warm neck and close his eyes. That was enough. Then came the flour. Taza had traded a stolen cavalry saddlebag for it, 2 pounds of white powder wrapped in oilcloth, tucked beneath a trader's wagon near the edge of Apache land. Risky, foolish maybe, but the boy's ribs were starting to show again. Winter hunger was different from summer thirst. It gnawed quieter, deeper. That night, Taza mixed flour with water and a pinch of salt. No yeast, no oven, just a flat stone heated in the fire. The batter poured thin, edges crisping like autumn leaves. The smell woke the boy. Not the crackle of the fire, not the hoot of the owl. The smell, warm, earthy, alive. He sat up, stared at the stone, at the golden brown circle rising with tiny bubbles. Taza broke off a piece, blew on it, held it out. The boy didn't move. Taza placed it in his palm. The child looked at it, then at Taza, then back at the bread. And then, so soft it might have been the wind, he whispered, "Bread." Just that. One word, crumbling off his tongue like the crust in his hand. Taza froze, didn't breathe, didn't blink. The boy chewed, swallowed, looked up again. More. Taza nodded, slow, careful, like handling a flame in a dry wind. He broke another piece, watched the boy eat, watched his throat work, watched his eyes, still blue, still haunted, soften just a little around the edges. That night, Taza didn't sleep. He sat by the fire, listening to the boy's even breaths, staring into the embers. Bread. It wasn't just a word. It was a door opening. And doors in the West didn't just let light in. They let danger in too. Because 3 days later, a trapper passed through the canyon. Bearded, half drunk, eyes sharp as a hawk's. He saw the boy fetching water. Saw his pale skin, his blue eyes, the way he flinched at sudden movement. The trapper didn't say much, just tipped his hat, asked for tobacco. Taza gave him some, watched him ride off. But the man's gaze? It lingered, like he was adding numbers in his head. Bounty posters. Missing child. Last seen near Silver Creek. Reward, 200. Taza knew the posters existed. Had seen them nailed to saloon doors, pinned to church posts, slapped onto telegraph poles along the railroad. He'd avoided town since the day he took the boy. Avoided roads. Avoided eyes. But now the boy spoke. Now he ate bread like a white child. Now he looked like someone's son. Someone who might still be looking. Taza sharpened his knife that night. Checked his rifle. Moved camp before dawn. The boy didn't ask why. He just packed his wooden horse, the one Taza had carved from mesquite, and followed. They rode 2 days without stopping. Slept in washes. Drank from hidden springs. Ate jerky and cactus fruit. On the 3rd night, under a sky smeared with stars, the boy pointed to the moon. "Moon," he said. Taza nodded. The boy pointed to the fire. "Fire." Another nod. Then he pointed to Taza. Silence. Taza waited. The boy's lips moved. Hesitated. Then, barely audible, Taza's chest tightened. He touched his own chest. "Taza." The boy repeated it. "Taza." Not perfect, but his. Taza reached into his pouch, pulled out the last piece of bread, broke in half, gave the bigger piece to the boy. The child ate it slow, savoring, then curled up beside the fire, wooden horse tucked under his chin. Taza watched him sleep, listened to the coyotes sing in the distance, felt the weight of what was coming. Because words were bridges, and bridges? They led both ways. The soldiers didn't come with guns drawn. They came smiling, with a Bible in one hand and a noose in the other, and they called the boy's name like it was a prayer. They found him at dawn, not with bugles or boots thundering, but with silence. The kind that settles before storm breaks. Taza smelled them first. Not sweat, not horse. Soap, store-bought lye soap. And coffee, boiled strong, bitter, the kind cavalry cooks made by the gallon. He woke with his knife in hand. The boy, Micah now, because the child had chosen it himself, whispered it one night like a secret, slept curled against the embers, one arm flung over the wooden horse, breath steady. Taza rose slow, bare feet silent on cold sand. He crept to the ridge above their camp, belly to earth, eyes scanning the valley below. 5 men, mounted, carbine strapped, but not drawn. One horse carried a rolled-up banner, U.S. flag, faded but proud. At the front, a man in a clean blue coat. No dust on his boots. Hot polished, chin shaved smooth as a preacher's handshake. Lieutenant Elias Collier. Taza had heard the name whispered in trading posts, cursed in Apache camps. The man who saved children, who returned stolen souls to God and country, who hung 3 Navajo men from a cottonwood for resisting custody, then read psalms over their swinging bodies. Collier dismounted, took off his gloves, smoothed his coat. Then he did something strange. He knelt, not to pray, not to inspect tracks. He knelt and opened a book, a Bible. He read aloud, voice clear, calm, like he was in church, not the desert. Suffer little children to come unto me. Taza's stomach turned. The boy stirred below. Taza slid back down the ridge, swift and silent as a shadow. Shook Micah awake. The child's eyes flew open, not startled but sharp, alert. He'd learned to wait quiet, to listen before he moved. Soldiers, Taza whispered. Micah sat up, didn't cry, didn't panic, just reached for his shoes. Moccasins Taza had stitched from deer hide, laced with sinew. They packed fast. No fire, no breakfast, just canteens, blankets, the wooden horse tucked into Micah's tunic. They were halfway to the canyon mouth when Collier's voice rang out, smooth as honey, cold as a grave. Boy, Micah Whitaker, we've come to take you home. Home. The word hit Micah like a slap. He froze. Turned. Taza grabbed his arm. Don't look. But the boy did. Collier stood 30 yards off, hands open, palms out, smiling, like a man greeting a long-lost nephew. Your aunt in Tucson has wept for you, son. Prayed every night. Lit candles. Your mother's grave? We placed flowers on it last spring. Real roses. Micah's breath hitched. Taza pulled him behind a boulder. He lies. How do you know? Micah whispered. Because men who tell truth don't bring ropes. Sure enough, one soldier, younger, nervous-looking, held a coiled lariat across his saddle horn. Not for cattle, for captives. Collier took a step closer. We don't want trouble, warrior. You kept him alive. We're grateful. There's silver in it for you. $50. Walk away. Let the boy go to his blood. Taza didn't answer. He loaded his rifle slow. Click. Slide. Chamber round. Collier saw it. Didn't flinch. Shoot me, he said, voice still calm. And you make him watch his savior die. Is that the memory you want him to carry? Or let him go. Let him have a bed. A school. A name that isn't whispered like a curse. Micah tugged Taza's sleeve. Is it true? He asked. Do I have an aunt? Taza looked down at him. Saw the hope flickering, weak but there, like the last ember in a dead fire. He crouched, put his hands on Micah's shoulders. They will call you white, he said low. They will wash the dust from your skin and the Apache from your tongue. They will teach you to fear what I taught you to love. The land, the silence, the stars. You will forget how to track, how to listen, how to survive. Micah swallowed. But my mother, she's gone, Taza said. And the woman who raised you, she's here. He tapped Micah's chest. In here, not in a grave they decorated with roses they didn't pick. Collier took another step. Last chance, he called. Walk out. Hands up. The boy comes with us. Peacefully, Taza stood, Micah beside him. He didn't raise the rifle, didn't speak, just stared. Collier sighed, closed his Bible, nodded to his men. Surround them, he said. Alive. The boy's worth more breathing. The soldiers spread out, hooves crunching gravel, leather creaking, a rifle cocked. Accidentally, maybe. The sound echoed like a hammer on stone. Micah flinched. Taza squeezed his hand. That night, they didn't sleep. They hid in a shallow cave, high in the cliffs, listening to the soldiers below, voices, laughter, the clink of tin cups. Collier sang hymns before bed, loud, like he wanted the rocks to hear. At midnight, Micah whispered, why does he sing? To remind God he's here, Taza said. And to remind us, he's not afraid to die for what he believes. What does he believe? That you belong to him. Micah was quiet a long time. Then, I belong to you. Taza didn't answer. He sharpened his knife instead. Watched the moon. Waited. Because dawn was coming. And with it, the rope. They ran like ghosts through slot canyons where sunlight never touched the ground. Until the shots rang out, and Taza shoved Micah into a crack in the stone, whispering, don't move. Don't breathe. Even if you hear me fall. They left at first light. Not waiting for the soldiers to wake, not waiting for coffee to boil or horses to be saddled. Taza moved like smoke. Micah followed like shadow, down the backside of the ridge, through a dry wash choked with sagebrush, into the mouth of Serpent's Throat, a canyon so narrow a grown man had to turn sideways to pass, its walls rising 50 feet straight up, smooth as bone, stained rust-red by ancient water. No horse could follow them here. Taza led on foot, one hand gripping Micah's wrist, the other brushing the stone for loose shale, for rattlers, for signs of old Apache glyphs, warnings carved by ancestors who knew this land better than God. The air cooled fast. Damp, smelled of wet rock and bat droppings. Their footsteps echoed, soft but too loud. Every scuff, every breath, bounced off the walls like a confession. Behind them, distant but closing shouts. Whistles, the shrill cry of a cavalry bugle, muffled by stone but sharp as a blade. They're splitting up, Micah whispered. Taza nodded. 2 will circle the rim. 3 will follow the trail. How do you know? Because I would. They pressed on. Deeper. The canyon twisted, turned, dropped into darkness. Taza lit a torch. Juniper bark soaked in pitch, and the flickering light painted their faces gold and black, like spirits caught between worlds. Micah didn't cry, didn't beg to stop, just kept walking, his small hands steady in Taza's, his eyes scanning the walls, the floor, the shadows, watching, always watching. After an hour, the canyon opened into a bowl, a hidden amphitheater of stone, ringed by cliffs, fed by a trickle of water, seeping from a crack high above. A secret place, an old place. Apache had sheltered here for generations. You could still see the soot stains from ancient fires, the grinding stones half buried in sand. Taza knelt, dug, pulled out a hide-wrapped bundle. Inside, dried venison, flint, a spare knife, and a small pouch of gunpowder. He'd cached it months ago, hoping he'd never need it. Now, he divided the meat, gave Micah the knife. Hide, he said. Where? Taza pointed to a fissure in the eastern wall, narrow, dark, barely wider than the boy's shoulders. In there, all the way back. Don't come out. Not for sound. Not for smoke. Not even for me. Micah's eyes widened. But no buts. You stay. You live. That's the only way I win. The boy swallowed. Nodded. Didn't cry. Just tucked the knife in his belt, clutched the wooden horse to his chest, and crawled into the crack like a lizard fleeing fire. Taza waited until he was out of sight. Then he walked to the center of the bowl, lit a second torch, and waited. The soldiers came at noon, not shouting now, not whistling, moving quiet. Professional. They tracked them through the canyon like hounds on a scent. 3 men, not Collier, his lieutenants, younger, hungrier, eager to prove themselves. They stepped into the bowl, rifles up, eyes scanning. Saw Taza standing alone. No boy, no horse, just a man. A torch, and silence. One soldier, blonde, freckled, couldn't have been 20, lowered his rifle just a hair. "Where's the kid?" Taza didn't answer, just stared. The second soldier, older, scar across his cheek, spat. "Indian don't talk. Shoot him. Dig around. Kid's gotta be here." The third, tall, nervous, fingers twitching on his trigger, glanced at the cliffs. "Sir, what if it's a trap?" The freckled one smirked. "What's he gonna do? Throw rocks?" Taza moved. Fast. He flung the torch into a dry sage clump near the canyon wall. Flames leapt, cracked, spread. In the chaos, he dropped, rolled, came up with his rifle. First shot, center mass. Freckles dropped like a sack of grain. Second shot, scar cheek spun, fired wild, took a bullet through the throat. Third soldier, the nervous one, screamed, ambush, and fired blind into the cliffs. Echoes boomed. Dust rained down. Taza stood, reloaded. The soldier turned, saw him, eyes wide with terror. "Please," he started. Taza shot him between the eyes. Silence. Smoke. The crackle of burning brush. Taza walked to the fissure. "Micah," he called low. "Come out." No answer. He crouched, peered into the darkness. "Boy, it's done." Still nothing. He reached in. Felt cloth. Skin. The wooden horse. Micah crawled out, slow, pale. Eyes huge. He looked at the bodies. At the blood. At the smoke. Didn't scream. Didn't vomit. Just whispered. Did they see me?" "No." Did you have to kill them?" "Yes." Micah nodded. Like he understood. Like he'd known the answer before he asked. Taza stood. Wiped his rifle. Slung it. Time to go. But as they turned toward the canyon's far exit, a new sound froze them. Hoofbeats. Slow. Steady. And a voice, calm. Clear. Singing. "Amazing grace. How sweet the sound, Collier." Alone. On horseback. Blocking the only way out. He stopped 10 yards off. Bible in one hand. Revolver in the other. Smiling. "Taza," he said, "you always were too brave for your own good." Taza stepped in front of Micah. Collier's smile faded. "You think I came to fight you?" he asked. "I came to finish what God started." He raised the revolver. Not at Taza. At Micah. "I'll count to 3, Collier said. "Step aside, or I'll put a bullet in the boy's leg. Drag him home screaming. Your choice." Taza didn't move. 1. Wind howled through the canyon. 2. Micah gripped Taza's shirt. Taza reached slowly, not for his rifle, for his knife. 3. Collier fired. Taza shoved Micah down. The bullet grazed Taza's shoulder. Hot, sharp, blooming red. He didn't flinch. He lunged. Not with the rifle. With the knife. Collier fired again, wild. Missed. Taza slammed into him. Horse reared. They crashed to the stone. Fists. Teeth. Steel. Collier was strong. Trained. But Taza? He fought like a man with nothing left to lose. The knife flashed. Once. Twice. Collier gasped. Clawed at his throat. Blood bubbled between his fingers. He tried to speak. Couldn't. Taza stood. Breath ragged. Blood soaking his shirt. Collier stared up. Eyes wide. Mouth working. Taza leaned down. Whispered. "Tell your God. He doesn't own this boy." Collier's body twitched. Then stilled. Taza turned. Micah stood frozen, tears streaking the dust on his cheeks. Taza walked to him. Knelt. Gripped his shoulders. "Run," he said. "South. To the river. Don't stop. Don't look back. But I'll catch up." Micah shook his head. "You're hurt. I'll catch up." He shoved the boy toward the canyon exit. Micah ran. Taza watched him go. Then he limped to Collier's horse. Took the canteen, the ammunition, the lieutenant's coat, to wrap his wound. He looked at the bodies, at the blood, at the Bible, lying open in the dirt. He picked it up, tore out a page, used charcoal from the fire to write 3 words. Run south. Don't look back. He carved an arrow into the stone beside it. Then he stumbled after the boy, leaving the canyon, leaving the dead, leaving his blood in the sand. 20 years later, a man with Apache eyes and a white man's walk returned to the canyon. Not for revenge, not for justice, but to leave bread and a bullet on a nameless grave and whisper goodbye in 2 tongues. The town didn't know his name. Didn't ask. He came in at dusk, when the saloons were loud and the street was half empty, shadows stretching long across the boardwalks like fingers trying to hold the day. He wore no hat, boots worn soft at the heel, a duster coat, faded gray, stitched at the elbow. No gun. Never carried one anymore. Said guns were for men who still believed in winning. They watched him from doorways, from windows, from behind whiskey glasses. He didn't look like a drifter. Didn't look like a preacher. Didn't look like a soldier. Looked like something in between. Something that didn't belong. He bought flour, lard, salt from the general store. Paid in silver coins, old ones, stamped with eagles long out of circulation. The clerk didn't ask where he got them. Didn't ask why his hands, calloused, scarred, trembled just slightly when he counted them out. Then he bought whiskey. A whole bottle. Not the cheap rot gut. The good stuff. Aged. Smoky. The kind men drank when they were saying goodbye. Last, he stopped at the blacksmith's. Didn't speak. Just laid a single bullet on the counter. Unfired, gleaming, decades old. The blacksmith, a grizzled Swede with a missing thumb, picked it up. Squinted. "This ain't modern caliber," he muttered. The man nodded. "I know. Where'd you get it?" "Same place I'm taking it back." The blacksmith didn't ask again. Just wrapped the bullet in oilcloth, tied it with twine, handed it back. The man walked out. No one followed. He didn't sleep in town. Slept under the stars, like he'd done as a boy. Like Taza had taught him. Rolled in his blanket, back to a boulder, knife under his pillow. Not for enemies, but for habit. Some lessons, once carved into bone, never fade. At dawn, he rose. Built a small fire. Mixed flour and water. Pinched salt. No yeast. No pan. Just a flat stone, heated slow. He baked the bread like Taza had. Edges crisp, center soft. The smell rose with the sun, curling into the crisp morning air like a prayer. He ate half, wrapped the rest in cloth, slung his pack, and walked, not toward the railroad, not toward the church, not toward the future, toward the past. The canyon hadn't changed. Still narrow, still silent, still stained rust-red by time and water and blood. He found the bowl easy. Memory guided him, not eyes, not feet. Something deeper, something that remembered the smell of gunpowder. The sound of colliers him, the feel of Taz's hand shoving him into the stone. The fissure was still there. He touched it, ran his fingers along the edge. Felt the grooves his small body had worn into the rock, hiding, breathing, waiting. He walked to the center, kneeled, dug, not deep, just enough. He placed the bread inside, unwrapped, whole, untouched. Beside it, the bullet. Then the whiskey, uncorked, poured slow into the earth. He sat back on his heels, closed his eyes, and spoke. First, in English, the tongue of his blood, of his mother's lullabies, of the schoolhouse he'd been dragged to, of the aunt who'd wept over him but never held him like he mattered. "I'm sorry I looked back." Then, in Apache, the tongue of his soul, of firelight stories, of rabbit hunts and canyon winds, of the man who'd carried him when the world went silent. Nizanigo shil nahai, shur nijoni yinishi. I remember you. You are still beautiful to me. Wind stirred, dust swirled. A hawk cried high above. He didn't cry, didn't shout, just sat. Let the sun warm his back. Let the silence settle into his bones. After an hour, he stood. Didn't fill the grave. Left it open. Let the earth take what it wanted. Let the coyotes come at night. Let the rain, when it finally fell, wash the bread into the stone. He turned to leave, then stopped. From his pocket, he pulled the wooden horse, worn smooth by 20 years of touch, of fear, of comfort, of memory. One ear chipped, one leg cracked, still whole. He set it gently on the grave's edge. "Run south," he whispered. "Don't look back." Then he did. He walked out of the canyon. Didn't run. Didn't glance over his shoulder. For the first time in his life, he didn't look back. The townsfolk saw him leave next morning. Same coat, same stride, but something different. Lighter, maybe, or heavier. Hard to tell. He didn't buy anything. Didn't speak. Just mounted the tired bay he'd rented and rode east toward the railroad, toward the cities, toward whatever came next. The blacksmith watched him go, turned to the saloon keeper. Who was that? The keeper shrugged. Dunno. Came in quiet. Left quieter. Think he'll come back. The keeper wiped a glass. Looked toward the canyon. Nah, he said. Some men don't come back. They just finish what they started. Years later, travelers passing through that canyon swear they smell bread on the wind, even when no fire burns. Some say they hear a child's whisper. Others, a warrior's song. The grave was never marked, never found. But sometimes after rain, you'll see wildflowers growing there, stubborn, bright, blooming where nothing should. And if you listen close, real close, when the coyotes sing and the wind sighs through the stone, you'll hear two voices, one young, one old, one in English, one in Apache, saying the same thing. You are not forgotten.